Welcome everyone to tonight's Petaluma Riverside chat. We're really excited to have Lindsay Shoop back to do this active session with us focused on ways to move our bodies better. She's going to show us some warm-up and cool-down exercises to support our optimal movement for sport and daily life. 3 weeks ago, she did an excellent talk on her new book, Better Great Than Never. Believing it's possible is where champions begin. If you missed it, you'll be able to find the recording on the Petaluma Riverside Chat YouTube channel. And I also recommend that you do get a copy of her book. It's fabulous, beautifully written, and it's also potentially a really nice book to share with your juniors if you're coaching juniors right now. Because I know we all want to get to Lindsay's warm-up and cool-down exercises ASAP, here's a very quick introduction to Lindsay and what she's about. Lindsay is a coach, author, speaker, and lifelong athlete. She is an Olympic gold medalist, a 3-time world champion, and a National Rowing Hall of Fame inductee. With a focus on performance optimization and longevity throughout sport and life, Lindsay hosts clinics for coaches, athletes, and teams of all ages and skill levels. She's a commentator for U.S. Rowing, and you'll be able to catch her commentating on the U.S. Rowing Olympic trials with David Wyatt live on NBCSports.com during their coverage of the semifinals and the finals this coming Thursday and Friday. She can be reached at lindsay-shoop.com if you'd like to get in contact with her after tonight's session and to also see what she's got going on. Thanks again for doing this session with all of us tonight, Lindsay. It's wonderful to have you again. Thanks.
I will actually move through this pretty quickly too, so that we can spend most of our time doing some of these things that some of you may have seen before if we've worked together before. But you know, at the end of the day, through everything that I did as an athlete, after my athletic career, I got into coaching. When I got into coaching, I ended up also getting my master's in exercise physiology. And it was when I was studying that I started to have all these epiphanies of like, oh, all of these things we did, lo and behold, there's science behind it and a lot of really cool ways to make all of those things even better, or, you know, kind of reaffirmed my confidence in all the things that we did while I was training. What I love about these types of sessions, the warm-ups and cooldowns in particular, is that I spent the first 7.5 years of my rowing career without a major injury. And I spent a lot of time doing a lot of prehab and a lot of, cool down time after practice, because I saw a lot of my teammates going through injury problems. And I thought, well, how can you be proactive? And that's what I really enjoyed about studying exercise physiology, was so that you could be completely proactive rather than constantly having to fix things and put band-aids on things. Instead of waiting until something happens, well, let's just do the best that we can to prevent it as much as possible. So by building in really good movement into everything you do, and that goes for warm-ups, it goes for technique, it goes for how you lift, how you cool down, how you move around throughout the day as a human being. I learned to like, oh, if I just squeeze my butt when I walk faster and it saves energy. Who knew? Plus, it lets me practice things that I'm going to use as a rower. I think of it as, the things that we'll do tonight, I think of them as like warming up, cooling down, prehab, rehab, and self-awareness through kind of a body scan all the time. Everything all rolled into one. So when it comes to warm-ups and cooldowns specifically, you want to make sure that you're addressing range of motion limitations, common ones, whether you or your athletes have them. It's always a good idea to address the common things in case they come up down the line. You want to make sure that you have a general warm-up, a dynamic portion of your warm-up, a neural portion of your warm-up, which I'll explain these, and a sport-specific portion of your warm-up. And then you can kind of generally address those things through your cool down as well. Big picture, when you're warming up, think about going from smaller motions to bigger ones, and slower speed to progressively faster speed. And when you cool down, do the exact opposite, kind of bigger motions down to smaller ones and faster down to slower, right? When it comes to static stretching instead of dynamic, people a lot of times will ask me this. Static stretching is like, you're sitting and doing I'm sitting here doing a hamstring hold or something like that without kind of, I see Devin, is that your name, Devin, on the top? Yeah, moving around, like, okay, I'm moving. That's more of a dynamic motion. You're literally using momentum to help you warm up, right? Whereas a static would be like, okay, here, my arm is across. Static stretches you normally reserve till after when you're cooling down because now you're warm at that point. However, if you do static stretches really carefully, let's say you have really severely tight calves all the time, it is a thing that just won't go away for you, or you work with an athlete that has that happening, building in some sort of static stretching into a warm-up can actually be okay as long as it's done really carefully, right? Simply by virtue of the muscles being a little bit colder, that's typically why you wouldn't do those sorts of things before a practice per se. So let's everybody get up and I'll talk as we go. Well, I mean, you don't have to do the exercises, you can just watch, you know, but I highly recommend doing them. When it comes to warming up, right, so the common range of motion limitations, let me tip my thing up here. Now we can see my head. Common range of motion limitations in rowing, right? What are they? To save time here. For me, what I would suggest is chest, right? Why chest? Because we do this a lot, and when we get short, it makes it really hard to get into our lats, right? So we want to address our chest. You want to address your hip flexors, right? You have 3 main hip flexors. They attach to 3. One is one of your quads, one connects to the inside of your pelvis, and one actually inserts to your lumbar spine, okay? So you want to address your hamstrings, calves, and I also say glutes. And then of course we can get into low back and all of that kind of stuff. But the key areas again are chest, hip flexors, hamstrings, calves, and also glutes, right? So you'll notice that everything that we do will touch on each of those parts. When you warm up, you want to make sure that you have at least a 5-minute general warm-up. That was the first thing I mentioned, was general. Okay, general warm-up, 5 minutes. Why 5 minutes? Because all your blood is typically in your middle, right? And so the 5 minutes gives you enough time for the blood to go from your middle to your extremities. So think about if you sit on the machine, no warm-up, and you just have at it, and you're just pushing, and the numbers are actually decent, but your heart rate's kind of low. Well, the reason for that is because all the blood is, again, in your middle. And then all of a sudden, when the blood rushes to your extremities, your heart rate, poof, shoots up. That's something called cardiac drift. If you do a general warm-up for at least 5 minutes, like short jog, hop on the bike, whatever you want to use, jump rope, you know, something that generally moves your body, again, in a progressive manner, that will allow you to get past that point of that cardiac drift so that when you go to warm up, you don't have that weird uptick in your heart rate, okay? So that would be the general portion. Getting into the dynamic, we're going to address those limitations. We're going to address you're going to address all your body areas. So you want to touch on all the prime movers. So the things you're going to use while you're actually training, whatever it is, whether you're going to row or run or bike or lift. You also want to wake up the supplemental muscles that are going to help your joints stay in place so that your prime movers can do their jobs, right? So that's kind of like why we do all this sideways and diagonal motion these days. That's become very popular. That's why you do it. Those are going to help with joint stability and moving into different ways to invite more muscles into the activity, which will just help you go faster and stay more balanced. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start. Hopefully you can see me. You can see me okay, yes? I can't quite see me. Let me spotlight me here. There we go. Oh wait, now I spotlighted you, Jessica. Put it back on speaker. It's still you. I'm still spotlighted on you. It's all right. I'll go to gallery. I can kind of see myself there. I just want to make sure I stay in the frame. That's why. First thing we're going to do, open up the chest. So we're going to do some of these reaches. You may have seen these before. I thought they were the strangest things when I first started doing them. But the biggest thing you want to look for when you do your reaches is to make sure that your shoulder blades are staying back and down, right? A lot of times, and that's why you go palms up, because when you go palms up here, it helps turn your shoulder back and down. It helps put your shoulder blades kind of down in their pockets here, right? So here we are, nice big T. If you need to, you can roll your shoulders back and down to kind of give yourself that reminder. And you can use a ballistic motion here, which is that momentum to help open up and stretch in the front. You might feel this in your biceps. You might feel it kind of along into your armpit some, but we're opening up these internal rotators of the shoulder. Okay, again, this is because it will help your shoulder blades sit where they need to so that your lats can actually do their job. If you're tight in the front, you're going to have a tendency to be here, which will cause your traps to work and your posterior delts to work instead of your lats, right? We want to use these big guys. So a T is one of the reaches. You can also do X's, right? If you do an X, then you alternate them. So because there's two sides. You can do W, okay? And this is for you to pick whatever motion you choose out of all of these. The key is those shoulder blades back and down. So W is here. You can also do, let me move my fan. You can also do an L. And when you do the L, you're looking for bicep to be by the ear, and then alternate. There's your L. Okay. You can also do a Y. Ys are very popular. However, tendency is that when we do a Y, we have a tendency to shrug up, and that's what we want to minimize. So make sure the shoulders are back and down. Can you get up into the Y? You can also do an I, but again, with the I, you're looking for bicep by the ear. But a lot of times when we do the I's, especially if we haven't practiced a ton of these, is a shrug starts to happen. So once you or your athletes, if you're coach, right, starts to do these, you get better at them, and they start to free up their traps and actually use the muscles back here to move, right, into the proper locations, then you can give them the more challenging. Notice the X is part of a Y. You can give them the more challenging Ys and Is. All right, tonight we're going to do a ton of reps with these just to practice them. That's the point. Typically, you might do a set of 6 for everything that we do, 3 on each side. While you're initially teaching something, it's always good to do extra reps, take extra time to do it. So like early season, when you're teaching technique, and you really shouldn't be doing as much volume early season anyway with the rowing part, put the volume in your warm-ups and cooldowns. Use that time to teach the proper techniques, right? Get the parts moving in the right ways first. That's going to help you in the long run to go fast, right? After the reaches, we're going to do a simple step back. So it's kind of like a high lunge, but we're going to do the reach with it. So here I am in my high lunge, pushing heel to the ground. Jessica, I'm sure you should recognize these. These are basically kind of level 1, step 1 exercises. Heel push down, you're going to activate the calf a bit. Make sure that leg is nice and long. Squeeze the quad as you do it. And you're going to pick a reach, pick whatever letter you like to do with it. Okay? Think of your torso as staying in the same location. You're just moving that one foot back. A lot of times what happens is we step back and put our weight on the back foot. Keep the weight over that front foot. All right? And then add your reach to it. By virtue of keeping that back leg long, you might even feel it in your hip flexors already. Just depends on if we're tight or not. Okay. From here, I'm doing these sideways so that you can see me, right? From here, we're going to do a split stance good morning, which we're going to keep doing our reaches, but now we're getting into the hamstrings as well. Split stance good morning is that same step back motion, but instead of just stepping back and keeping the torso up, you're going to push your hips back. You're going to feel it in the hamstring of the front leg. Aim for your torso to be parallel to the ground here, right? So in slow motion, I step back, push my hips back, okay? So I'm getting it in my hamstring. If your calves are tight, you might even feel it in the top of in your calf, simply because it runs behind your knee, connects to your hamstrings. Same thing though, this is dynamic, so we're alternating and add the reach to it. So here I am. Step back, hips back, reach at the same time. I like using the W with this one simply because if my hands go way up overhead, it throws off my balance initially. And again, reiterating shoulder blades back and down here. Another one you can use is a simple M or A. I call it an A. The books call it an M, right? Just right here for someone, if you or someone that you're working with is particularly tight and has trouble not shrugging, then just have them use a reach that goes like this, right? What you're looking for is to squeeze these muscles here to move your shoulder blades rather than any of this. Whatever achieves proper scapular motion is what we're looking for here. So let's do a few extra of these. You can always use a little hamstring stretch. And you can challenge yourself with lots of different letters with those reaches. It was about 10 years ago, the first time someone suggested that I do these reaches, and I thought, why the heck do you do these? That's so weird, because they never explained to me why. And now I realize how revolutionary they are in helping us properly use our lats, which also takes tension out of our neck. You guys ever get cricks in your necks? It's quite possible that it's a tight chest causing the crick in your neck, right? All right, so now we're going to go into a slightly larger, so we did a small step back, did our good morning. Now we're going to get into a progressive reverse lunge. Notice how we started small, we're getting bigger, our reaches are going to get bigger too. Make sure there's nothing behind you. Always a silly little mistake is like a pencil or a piece of paper, step on it, and then we have an accident, right? So progressive reverse lunge, big reach. Notice that as I step back, my right leg goes back, which means my right hand goes way up and really opens up everything. Big long lines, while my left arm goes way up in the back. My fingers are spread wide, tons of energy, right? And that's even waking up my forearms here. And then alternate. You might find that one side is better than the other, more stable or tighter, more comfortable. That's part of the body scan self-awareness that I was talking about. So we're warming up. We're addressing hip flexors here. We're addressing tight chest. We're addressing tight lats. Our heart rate's going up. Our breathing rate is going up. I'm even starting to sweat a little bit here. And I'm paying attention to the fact that, oh, my left hip flexor is a little tighter. I should say hip flexors are a little tighter than my right ones. Okay. All that feedback from this one exercise. Squeeze your belly button while you do this. Squeeze your butt while you do this. It'll help you stay stable. All the while as we go, roll the shoulders back and down. Just have a check-in with that periodically, because as we do these, we're going to have a tendency to probably creep up. So anything, proud chest. Let that chest stay up and open the whole time. Okay. I'm going to keep doing extras because this feels really good. All right. So from here, we're going to get down into a frog. Why I love this one is because it's an easy way for your athletes, for you, or your teammates, or your athletes, for the ones that have really good range of motion to kind of show off something that is really important in rowing. Range of motion down here, right? Let me make sure you can see me on the floor. Take me down here. It's called a frog. We're just going to get down here, get as low as you can, right? For me, I've been doing this since I was about 4, which is basically hands, wrists, and ankles can be aligned. You're going to tuck your chin to your chest. And you're going to touch the floor out in front of you. Then you're going to touch the floor by your feet. And then you're going to thread the needle and touch the floor way back behind you, right? So go between your legs and touch the floor behind you. Your chin is tucked to your chest this whole time. If we aren't getting this low, or you are working with someone that can't get that low, give them an implement like this little short foam roller, or a little short box, or a yoga block, or a dumbbell that you can set on its side, and they can still get as low as they can. Because the point here is to make sure that your chest is staying up, that your heels are down, and that you can drop your hips nice and low. This is opening up all the fascia in your back, particularly in your thoracic spine, and in your lumbar spine. So let's do that a couple of times. Creating basically a big C, really letting those hips sag. This is a really nice one, particularly in the morning. A lot of back injuries occur in the morning, so it's really important that we all take the time to give our backs the fluidity and warmth that it needs, particularly if you are training early in the morning or it's your first training session of the day. All right, so let's stand up out of this one. I talked long down there. Stand up carefully. You might get a head rush. That happens. Make sure that when you do this one, if you need to stand up a couple of times in between and not hang out down there for too long, you gauge that, all right? I'm 6 feet tall. It always gives me a head rush if I stay down too long and then hop up too fast. So just be aware of that. Now, we're gonna go right back into our frog. So now that we had our head rush, let's get back down there. This time, rather than reaching out in front and warming up the fascia, right, stretch, loosening those bags, you're gonna do a nice long step back. Looking for a nice long leg. If you squeeze your quad, it will help your leg go straight, and you can push your heel back, which will again stretch your calf. You'll stretch adductors here, hip flexors, and we're gonna rotate away. You'll get them even more, and we'll get some cross bracing action. For me, I get a few pops, which actually feels pretty good, but go back to our frog. That's where you meet in the middle. And then you switch legs. Big T rotation. If one side is tighter than the other, just hold it a little bit longer, okay? And you're rotating toward the front leg. So whatever leg is back, you're gonna lift, what is that? The opposite arm and rotate so that you can address all the muscles as they cross your body. Come back to the frog. Hips sag, and rotate. As you do these, start a little slower and then increase speed as you go. Again, this is meant to be dynamic warm-up, but we're also learning right now, so take the time to do it technically correctly. And then as you feel like you're getting it, all right, increase speed. Cool thing is an advanced version of this is literally switches where you hop between one side and the other. For me, I can literally do this same one for years and get tons out of it. Make sure we're breathing this whole time. Yeah. Hips get nice and low. Let's do 2 more to each side. Everybody do 2 more to each side. And if you have a tight side, do an extra for that tight side, which I will do. Notice we did the T rotation. We just did it horizontally. So we're still addressing our chest along with everything going diagonally across the front and backs of our bodies, as well as our hip flexors and calves and our glutes a bit in there. So getting it all done. All right, now we're gonna go and step to the side. So working on the supplementals, we're gonna get into our smaller glutes. It'll help stabilize our hips, help strengthen our hips. I'm breathing here. Look at this. I'm sweating and breathing. That's what a warm-up should do. Lateral squats. We're going to reach up high overhead, step slightly wide to the side, touch the ground as we step to the side, and then come back up. When you push off, since I stepped to the right first, right? When I go to push back up, I'm really going to exaggerate that extension so that I really squeeze my right butt cheek to really push up out of it. All right, here we go, opposite side. All the way up, and we're opening up the intercostals, we're opening up the abs here. So really reach. This is not like, oh, I'm here. No, really reach. You're gonna get a bit of a back bend with this. Okay to do because you're not holding weight. You're just using your body. Alternate. Chest stays open, hips drop. All right. If we aren't quite getting there, I'm gonna break out my trusty implement again. Give yourself a point. Have a bench, some sort of frame of reference where you drop down and you stop at that point before you start to bend over. We're looking for chest to stay up. We're looking for proper kind of position of your torso. Rather than just bending over, we're looking for the hips to do this. We're looking for our quads to work, our glutes to work, our hamstrings, believe it or not. But again, alternating. You might even say, pick a point on your arm as a frame of reference, where if I can't quite get all the way down, well, can I get my forearm, my knee to halfway past my forearm? And that's where I stop. Those are just little frames of reference that you can use to track your progress over the weeks to see if you're actually getting lower and lower. Let's each do 2 more per side here. See if we can speed up a little bit and really push off that outside leg, right, when we come back. Really extend that hip when you push off. All right, next, let's go with a wide stance. This is a lateral lunge, which I was never taught to do these properly. Lateral lunges, you can mix these up in all kinds of ways, but the basic way is just fixed, feet not moving. You can progress it by eventually over time stepping into your lateral lunge. You can also use a slide to do your lateral lunge. You can rebound them, right? But right now, starting with feet planted, nice and wide. As your hip abducts, let your foot go with it. Notice that I didn't keep my foot pointed toward the screen as I opened up my hips. No, that puts torque on my knee. I'm also not intentionally putting my foot way out to the side, just letting it stay at the same orientation to my thigh. You guys see that? Okay, so here I am, lateral lunge. Think about your butt. Imagine there is a bench back here, and when you do this, rather than just stepping to the side and letting that knee shoot way out in front of your toe, the butt back into that chair that's behind you. Okay, so shoot your butt toward the side, right? Toward the back behind you, that seat, rather than just stepping. Okay, so here we are, nice and wide. Looking for the hip to be at the same height as the knee here. Can you get there? If we're not quite there yet, get an actual bench, right? Give yourself something to aim for. If you need to, get the bench, grab a stick, sit on the bench, touch it so that you can actually lengthen your adductors appropriately so you can actually achieve this position. Then use the implement to push yourself back up out of it if you need it, or use the implement to help you stabilize while you're doing this. What this is doing is opening up my inner thighs. It's going to free up your hips so that you can get into this position. All right, so let's each do 3 per side on this one, because we're going to add some different rotations. We're going to do plenty of lateral lunges. These are highly underutilized activities. They lengthen and strengthen at the same time. The number of times I've gone out for a run and been like, wow, my left leg really does nothing while I run. All because my hip flexors and adductors were tight. Who knew? But only on one side. Okay. So now everybody come back to the middle. Let's give the legs a little shake out, because we're going to go back into our lateral lunge here. We're just going to add 2 different types of rotation. So here I am, lateral lunge again, nice and wide. As I do this, everybody go like this for me. I'm going to roll my shoulders back. My humerus is going to my upper arm is just going to dangle with my torso. Just going to be at a 90-degree angle at my elbow, palms up. Why? Because that lets my shoulder blades stay back and down really easily. And as I go into my lunge, I'm going to rotate to the side. What that's going to do is create even more length down the side of my body, right? And on the inside of my leg. So notice as I rotate, or as I lunge, I rotate at the same time. If you need to, lunge, then rotate. Perfectly fine. But as we get better, increase the challenge by doing it simultaneously. Squeeze belly button, squeeze butt to get up out of these positions. You'd be surprised if you want to jump higher, lunge better, lift better. Just think about squeezing your middle. Use your abs. You do core every time you move. Okay, so now, instead of being here Everybody give me a big T. Shoulders are back and down. We're going to take our pinky finger and touch our pinky toe. Here's how it's going to work. We're going to do basically like a windmill. It's called a windmill rotation. I'm going to lunge and rotate so that the pinky side of my hand touches the ground outside my pinky toe. Right? And I come back to the middle. Every time, come all the way back up to the reset position. Then sit back on that bench, right? Sit back and down onto the bench and rotate. Remember this one. We're going to use it in our cool down. All right. Am I the only one sweating? Maybe. Okay. All right. So now we've stepped to the side small. We've opened everything up in the front. We've stepped really low with our lunges. We've rotated. We've really opened up all the stuff. Now we're going to add in a little bit of strength, doing just a basic forward lunge. Tip on lunges is if you're doing lunges, do reverse lunges first. We did that for a reason. Then sideways lateral lunges. Forward lunges last because you tend to put pressure on your knee and you want to make sure that your muscles are super warm before you do them. So forward lunges, brace that middle. And first we'll just kind of counterbalance with our arms. All right. So when I say counterbalance, left leg goes, right arm goes, right? Kind of like a giant run. Squeeze middle, counterbalance. Awesome. Believe it or not, this is also waking up and lengthening your hip flexors if you're staying upright. Sometimes you'll see that when people do this, they lean forward. It's typically because hip flexor, something maybe in their abs is tight. So stay upright. And that will tell you a little bit about where maybe you or someone that you know is tight. All right, so with this one on the next couple of reps, what you're going to do is if my left leg goes forward, I'm going to rotate over that leg with my torso up and then come back, okay? Rotate over the leg, torso up. If you need to, again, separate the motions. Step, you can put your knee down if you need to, then rotate, then come back, okay? It's about starting where you are and then making it progressively more challenging as you do this consistently. So what I love about body weight exercises is you can practice them fairly often and they will make everything else so much better. You can we're taking more time than you could otherwise. You can take 15 minutes twice a day with these exercises and they will help you row better. They will help you move better in all the ways. All right. So now what we'll do is we'll do a vector lunge and a stability reach, the last two of our dynamic warm-up here. So we've done all these lunges. Now we're going to step into a V. So my hips are going to stay pointing toward you guys in the screen. So when I step, I'm not going to go, because then I'm just doing a forward lunge. I'm actually going to let my hips open up a little bit. So you'll see my knee drops out a little bit when I step. So again, beams of light, hips are facing you, counterbalance. Notice my leg splays a little bit here. And notice I keep my knees bent to take the pressure off, right? There we go. Think of 45-degree angles with your steps, but keep your hips toward the screen. Get as low as you can, stabilize by squeezing the middle. Use your hands to counterbalance. Again, if you need to, use an implement to help you balance until you get the proprioception down. It's all about moving the body in space. If you need an implement, totally fine. Just put it there and let it help you step back up, right? I'm sweating. Okay, so I've said move faster as we go, right? Make everything bigger as we go. Well, to be very stable, you kind of need everything to be warm. So that's why I put a stability motion here. And we'll only do one of these or two of these per leg, alternate every single one. You're basically going to hang into a hover, like a running man hover here. And then as I swoop my leg back, I'm going to straighten my knee and go into a tabletop position with a T. So if I start here, I do this because it helps me balance. And I slowly swoop back okay? And then I come back. Another reason why you can't do this one as your first activity is you have to have your hamstrings warmed up and open to even get into that position. You'll feel that tight hamstrings will prevent you from getting there. All right, so try 2 of these per side. Alternate. Which one did I start on? Alternate between each one. Move slowly. This is not meant to be done fast. It's meant to be, how long can I stabilize on this one foot? Okay, use all of your parts, all of your length, and all of your strength. Right? Let's see it. So here we are. Okay. And the T, right? So make sure that we are palms up. Sometimes when we get into this flying position, we go palms down, palms up, always challenging the shoulder blades to stay back behind us. Grab some water here. Now that we took 40 minutes, Jessica, to do all of that, we'll take an extra 5 minutes to rush through the cool down. Really fast, I will go through what it would be a neural segment, right? So, okay, we've lengthened, we've strengthened. Well, we got to be perky too. We talk about being quick at the front end and rowing. Well, you can't be quick at the front end and rowing if you aren't quick, period, right? So how can we practice that except for when our coach is like, be quicker, be quicker, be quicker. Well, how? All right, here's how. If we work on jumps and leaving the floor, if we actually work on these things on stable ground, it's much more likely that it'll happen in the boat. Plus, it's fun and is a strength builder, let alone stability and all that kind of stuff. So what we'll start with is we're going to get into a lunge. If you need to, you can start in that high lunge, or you can get down into that low lunge, okay? And all that you're going to do is I want you to think about, there's a spot in between. I'm going to pick this line on my floor. You might have a design on your carpet, make it halfway in between your feet. Here's the design I'm going to use and the line on my floor. And all I'm going to do is be down in my low lunge position. I'm going to use my arms and energy to jump up, land my feet together on that spot. All right, so here's how it would look. Stable middle. Okay, literally jump up as high as you can from that lunge position. That's how it goes. 1 per side, alternate as you go. Use your arms to help you, all right? Normally how you would do this is you would do up to 6 as you're teaching it though, and if you want people to jump high, if you want to jump high, you can only do 1 or 2 in a row before you start to kind of lose that max explosivity. So do 1, then do 2, then take a break. Then do 2 more and then take a break, right? Keep it very short if you want people, if you want yourself to be explosive, right? Next one, we'll move a little bit more quickly. The next one is called a squat drop, which is we'll start up the way that we did with those lateral squats on my tippy toes, and I'm going to come down and land in that position like we did those lateral squats. But I'm going to do it fast. So if I'm up here on my tippy toes, shoulders are back and down, chest is up and proud. All right, I'm going to think, drop, and as soon as my fingertips hit the ground, catch yourself in that low squat position, or the lowest position that you can get to, right? Before the body bends over, stop yourself. If that means you stop here, fine, but just catch it in your legs, right? If you bend over, you're going to find that you're going to catch it in your back or in your toes rather than in your quads. That's why I say wherever we are today with our length, that's where we are. So we're up and we drop. This is also particularly good for as we age through the sport. It's important to stay in touch with the quickness. That's the stuff that we lose as we get older. So it's important that we do more of that. Get outside of our comfort zone a little bit and go, oh, that'd be a little more perky, right? It's going to help us even when we want to do steady state. Same thing with those. You would do 1, then you would do 2, you might do 2 more, and then since we're just learning, keep it at 1s and 2s only, okay? And give yourself a rest in between. Oh, I see it's moving back and forth. Okay, so now what we're going to do is the exact opposite of the one that we just did. So we're going to do what's called concentric only. This is a great strengthening exercise. If you do not have a gym, You don't need weights to develop quad strength here. All right, I'm just moving my fan so I don't hit it. Normally, if you were outside, I would want you to like, throw your arms in the air, do all kinds of things. But since we have low ceilings, I stop here so I don't hit. All right. But what I'm going to do is my arms are going to be with my trunk. I'm going to be in that low squat position that we have warmed up for. And then you're going to do a full jump, leave the ground, and land and stop. Catch yourself right in the same starting position. Neck is neutral. Okay. So here's how it would look. Okay. Jump as high as you can. I imagine that that was probably not the best demonstration since it was the first one I did today. But the aim is in the air to really exaggerate, basically throw your belly out there to help you practice hip extension. Okay. We talk about glutes being important for rowing now. Well, let's not talk about it. Let's actually do something about it. So when we jump, when we're in the air, poof, squeeze your butt. Make sure it's really going through. Use these exercises to practice the full range of motion. If our hip flexors are tight, we literally cannot fully extend our hips. So that's why it's important to really open up everything in the front if we want to use everything in the back as well. So let's everybody do one more concentric only. Same thing goes with this. Keep them at 1s and 2s for now, that we can really work on the explosion. If you want to do more actual numbers of jumps, just increase the sets. All right. Last one, put it all together, full on continuous jump. Everybody does too, right? So what we just did broke down the jump. Now we're ready to actually jump. Squat jump, jumpy, whatever you want to call it. Counter movement jump is what it is. So I'll start in a relaxed position, swoop down, jump up, swoop down, jump up, and then land. Okay, so everybody do 2, full speed. See if you can fully extend your hips in the air. Practice that. Let that be your focus for these. Doesn't matter if you move around, nothing else matters. Can you fully extend your hips for these? All right, so here we go. I'm comfortable. Okay. And catch yourself. Be accountable to catching yourself in that low squat position. All right, so now that we're warmed up, and I just used entire 45 minutes to teach you the warm up, we can go into a warm down. I can explain this to you. Moving from there, what we just did was the neural portion of a warm up. So now, at that point, yeah, it might take you 15 minutes to do that if you just went straight through it, having already learned it. This is when you would hop on the erg and do your erg drills, or get right into your building out in your rowing, right? After your general warm-up, dynamic warm-up, then neural warm-up, that's when you now go into your sport-specific, also known as rowing, warm-up, right? And I can guarantee that your first strokes off the dock will be so much better if you properly warm up all of your parts so that your body can actually do what you're asking it to do. The athletes that I work with, we take 15 minutes to do a warm-up, and the first stroke off the dock is like, all right, here we go. We're ready to practice, we're ready to race. Again, another great reason why it's important. Take an extra 10, 15, 20 minutes if you are practicing in the morning. It's going to increase the quality of the rest of your session. You're not taking any slack strokes. You don't pattern bad strokes simply because you're not warmed up properly, right? So now we're warm. We're only taking great strokes. Cooling down, I'll go through this a little bit more quickly. I know we're going to go over, this is always what happens. You again want to address the prime movers, the big muscles like your quads and your glutes and your lats, right? But you also want to address the supplementals, which, like I said, is the ones when you step to the side, the smaller glutes, the smaller muscles that are going to help keep your joints together. A key point with whatever exercises you choose is you want to take at least 30 to 45 seconds of time per kind of muscle group or body area. That will give you continued gains. You don't have to stretch one muscle for 5 minutes to get something out of it. No, as long as you are getting 30 to 45 seconds, because not everybody has time for this, right? I have worked with teams where the kids had to run off to the bus and catch the bus at the end of practice. 2 hours in the door, out the door to do everything. So any way, again, that's why I like to build all this into everything I do, any way to be as efficient and effective as possible. Let's go back to why I said the stick, right? And why, remember, those lunges that we did. You can very simply do a basic dowel stretch series and then be like, hey, also make sure that you stretch your calves on top of this, right? If you have a dowel, you can do that. Remember the big reverse lunge with the opposite reach that we did? If you have a dowel, or if you have a rope or just your arms, whatever you have, can do that. I can go arms up and overhead. If I have a stick, make sure I'm not shrugging like this, be accountable to it. Use the stick to help you open up your front, right? And then my right leg is the one that's back, lean to the side. Now we are opening all this up. We are opening all of this up. We are getting all the way down into our quad as well. One of our quads is also a hip flexor. You can put your knee on the floor for this. We are cooling down now. Lean to the side. Awesome. Right? When you do this, make sure that we're not arching our back too much. Yeah, arching our back will open up our ribs a little bit and our abs, but if you squeeze them, it will also help you separate your hip so that you get more stretch out of it. And with this, right, I said 30 to 45 seconds. That does not mean you need to now sit here for 30 or 45 seconds straight. You can do it as 3 by 10, 3 by 15, 2 by 20, however you want to count it out. It just needs to be accumulated time close enough together. So here we go. I roll my shoulders back and I do the opposite side, right? Play around with it. You might find that something tries to creep into a weird spot as we do this. Well, put it back, right? That's called an accommodation. That's why you need to be accountable to the technique at all times. And I won't hold them too long. Just know that pretend like we do all of these for 30 to 45 seconds each. So now what we're going to do, keep our dowel. This is a basic dowel series. Step back into our lateral lunge here. And you can do the same thing. Here I am. I just use the pole to help me. And I stretch and I hold for a few. Same thing, roll shoulders back and down. And I stretch and I hold and I rotate, right? Okay. You can even do the windmill. And what I love about this one with the stick is that it helps me keep my chest open for future warm-ups, right? So here I am, same thing. This is where a taller stick would be helpful because you can actually, here I am in this position. Well, if I have a taller stick, I can actually help my chest stay up when I do this, right? That's a very challenging one, but I love doing it. You can plant your stick on the ground and use it to help you stay in the position or get a little more rotation out of it. Okay. Let's put our stick down here. You can always stretch your calves. 2 easy ways to stretch your calves. I know a lot of you have calf stretches in your back pocket. You can get one of those little runner thingies where you put your foot in it. You can also put your foot up on your couch. I always like stretching where I can actually, my calves, when I can actually get out over whatever it is. For whatever reason, it just helps me stretch my calves better. When you do this, stretch your calf with your knee bent, and then also do it with your knee straight. Reason for it is you have 2 different calves. One crosses your knee, one does not. And by bending your knee, you basically target one over the other one, right? So I'm going bent knee first. Okay, and then I'm going to straighten my leg as I go. As you straighten your leg, you might find it starts to pull into your hamstring a little bit. There's a reason for that. We're a human system of interconnected parts. Okay? Always do both sides. Even if you're like, oh, my right pinky nail is tight, you know, you're not only going to stretch that one, you're going to stretch the left one too. A lot of times, and Mark Nowak, our fantastic US rowing physical therapist, taught me so many things, got me really interested in this. Oftentimes, if something's bothering you here, it might actually be here causing the problem, right? So think of looking across the body for the real cause. That's why I say sometimes when we get neck issues, it's actually our chest is tight. All right, so calves. So now we are going to do hamstrings Hamstrings, you can use either a rope, a shirt, a sock, whatever it is. You can do this in many, many ways. But two things, two key points for this are you can do it on your laying flat on your back, or you can do it seated. But when it comes to your hamstrings, you're going to do one where you pull your thigh to your chest, hold the belly, which is the middle of your muscle, and then you're going to work your foot up over your head. Okay. You want to keep your leg tucked to your body for this one, because when you stretch your hamstrings, when you go with a bent knee, you get your proximal, which is basically your hamstring closer to your butt. Okay, so we're getting two different areas of our hamstring by doing this. Right now, it's the area that's closer to your butt, about midway up, all the way up to your butt. You would do both sides with that. Okay. Then, from basically the same position, you can use a rope, or like I said, or a t-shirt. You're going to start with your legs straight. So if you guys don't know if you can all see me, you might still be doing that wonderful one on the floor with the bent knee, which is amazing. It always feels great. Go with straight leg. Okay. Now we're going through these kind of fast. Reason being is that will now get your distal, or the basically mid hamstring, and then closer to your knee area of your hamstring. Okay. If you squeeze your quad, or at least think about squeezing your quad while you're stretching your hamstrings, that will help you lengthen your hamstrings even more because of the reciprocal nature of your muscles. Turning one on typically turns off the opposite, right? So if I squeeze my quad to straighten my knee, it's going to tell my hamstrings to turn off so I can stretch them a little better. Okay. I had about 6 more, but I'll give you like a 10-second snippet of each one. We can revisit. From here, we can go into a wide V sit. Can you still see me? I can't quite, I think you can still see me. Let me tip it down a little bit. So if you're on your floor, okay. If you're on the floor, go into a wide V sit. This will get everything, right? You can get your adductors, which are the inner thigh guys, whoop, those guys, long and short. You can get your hamstrings, you can get your calves, you can get your low back, you can get a lot of things just by doing this one position, right? So here we are. You want to lift up your butt and make it seem like your butt knuckles are pointing back and down, right? The last thing you want is your butt to fall under on here. If it does, it might be, if you have trouble getting out of that position, your hamstrings are tight, right? That's a piece of it. Your glutes might be tight. Anything back here that is tight is going to tuck you under. Okay, so the aim is to not be on the squishy part of your tushy. It's to be up on your tailbones, almost in front of your tailbones. From there, a couple of easy hamstring stretches is rotate. Keep your chest up while you do this. Rotate and reach down whatever leg you choose. You'll get hamstring in there. Okay. You'll also get whatever side you rotate away from. You'll lengthen those adductors. If you bend the knee a little bit, this is where you could also get a different portion of your hamstring. But I'm reaching for my foot here. And then I would come back to middle, rotate, go down the other leg. Again, I would do that a few times until I got a total of 30 to 45 seconds for each leg. And then I would come to the middle and stay chest up again. I would check my butt, make sure my tailbones are back and down. Check my butt, go forward with my torso upright. Get a total of 30 to 45 seconds time there. Relax a bit. Then I would also do it where I now would round my back at this point and tuck my chin to my chest. Get more time out of that, 30 to 45 seconds. And the last piece here for this particular stretch is going to be for your QL, your quadratus lumborum, which is half of your low back. So now I'm in my V sit, but instead of rotating so that my belly button is kind of toward my leg, I'm going to keep my belly button toward this space, toward my V space that I've created, and windmill myself. So if I lean to my left, I'm going to see if I can get my left shoulder inside my left knee and go hand up overhead. All right, so rather than being over like this, can I show you my face through my arms? Okay. This is, dancers can, I mean, basically lay down sideways with this one. Maybe where we are is here. I go hand behind my head, make sure you don't pull your head forward. Go hand behind my head, behind your head, and just arm on the ground inside the V. That might be where we are, but you will still get your low back in this. Okay. That up and overhead position just lengthens it even more because you're lengthening your lat at the same time. And then if you bend your tricep, you're basically requiring more length out of your body because you're creating longer lines. And then I would switch sides. Again, hand on the inside of the leg, go here, or if you can get up and open and peek through, you can do it that way as well. Whichever one works for you. We're getting all the way down the side of the body here, really unlocking the low back from the top of the back of the hips, back of the pelvis with this one. All right, so in the essence of time, we'll come up. And the last two things that I'll mention are easy, simple one that is so easy and doable all the time. You can do this at Starbucks, waiting in line for your coffee. Right over left, hand up overhead. I'm getting tricep stretch here. I'm getting lat stretch here. But because I go right over left and lean also, you're opening up everything down your sides in the front and in the back. If you stay much more open in the front, you're going to lengthen more in the front. If you kind of rotate a little bit, you'll lengthen more in the back. Very easy to do. But again, with this one, make sure we're not poking our heads forward, looking for long lines down the sides of the body. And anytime you have your hands up and overhead, believe it or not, if you just inflate your lungs and your belly, you will stretch open those ribs, right? You'll open up those intercostals and kind of reset them. Because in rowing, sometimes those riblets cross, or they get tucked under one another. It happens. So blow open that space to really open it up. Apart from, you know, stretching your forearms and all that kind of stuff and doing a little action for your calves, the last one is you can use a doorway. This is me, pretend like I'm standing in a door frame. Okay, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing to keep opening up your front. You can do it in the W shape. Notice my hands are kind of like karate chopping here. You can do it palms flat. You can do it in T, okay, in the doorway. All of the letters that we did in the warm-up, anything where the shoulders are back and down, get in that position, whatever helps you keep that, step into a doorway and just make sure we are opening up this part of us. A big miscue a lot of times is when we go to stretch. I was showing someone this yesterday. When we get in the doorway and then we go to rotate, this has a tendency to happen. When we're tight in the front, that's an accommodation. Okay, so just make sure you stretch in a way that, okay, we're actually stretching. Stop there, right? If that's what you have. Believe it or not, I am a stickler for the chest now that I know what I do about exercise physiology compared to how you want to row fast. So opening up that chest is something that I always talk about in the way that I talk about technique. And I really reiterate it in all the warm-ups, cool downs, lifting that I do, because it just allows you to use your lats and your trunk better, which will allow you to get to your legs a lot better. I know we went long, but we can still answer some questions. I'm all jazzed up now, I'm awake. And I definitely ran through those a little bit more quickly. And there are a zillion and one ways to skin a cat. These are some of my favorite kind of basic warm-up exercises that can build into so many other things. They parallel really nicely with rowing, with other modalities, because you touch on everything, but they also warm you up for the weight room, right? A lot of those things you can then add load to or slightly adjust a motion and add load to it, and now you're lifting weights.
So which of the things you showed us is the best for really tight IT bands?
Foam rolling. We can do foam rolling for that one.
Yeah.
If you're that is something that you would want to foam roll for sure. In your cool down, I didn't do a glute stretch, but you can do a basic seated glute stretch, and you can also do some, this depends, right? People have mixed feelings on doing a pigeon simply because of your knees as well. Have you done a pigeon stretch before? Yeah, so that is one that you can use, but honestly for IT bands, and those guys will get sneaky. You won't even realize it. And you're like, ow! The foam roller will keep you aware of that to the point where if you do it a little bit every day, it'll bother you at first. Over time, it'll go away, and you'll be like, what were they ever tight? Like, was that a thing? But I really
do you foam roll every day?
do. I don't every day because, you know, I'm not at practice every day, but I do. Well, I shouldn't say not every day. Yes, actually, I do every day, just different parts. But for my IT bands in particular, especially if you run at all, running irritates them more than, for me, what I've noticed is that running irritates those more than anything else. So yeah. And with foam rolling, same thing. Spend 30 to 45 seconds on it, right? You don't need to do 5-10 minutes. It's going to take you all day, and you're going to be less likely to do it if you feel like you need to be there for an hour. So take whatever time you can. You're going to get gains from even 30 to 45 seconds. And even if only the right side is bothering you, do the left too. Always, yeah. And it has been suggested that, let's say one side is always tighter than the other. It is, or one side's always weaker than the other. It is okay to do an extra rep or an extra few seconds on that particular side, but make sure you're addressing both sides until they show balance, right?
So Abigail, would you like to ask your question, or do you want me to?
I was wondering, we are sort of limited on our ground. So our options are warming up on gravel, sort of sidewalk, parking lot, or the dock. What would you recommend?
As stable a platform as possible. Concrete is the hardest, right?
Yeah.
So like they even say that asphalt is softer than concrete when it comes to actual give. So just keep in mind, like gravel is going to be like, you know, it might fall away from under them, but at the same time, it's going to have a little more give. That's another thing that I like about these warm-ups is that you can do them in a small space, and you don't have to sit on the ground or anything like that. You are literally getting all these things and you're on your feet, excuse me, the entire time. You said gravel, you said dock, you said...
Well, so parking lot, and then, yeah, so parking lot, and then slash the... That's, I think the other space is concrete, so we're sort of limited.
Yeah, I mean, start with maybe the parking lot, and whatever works for your space, for your group. Like, are you able to have a bigger amount of space? And you could also try each one and see how they do. I would say the gravel is going to be the hardest one to do it on, simply because that would move around. Yeah. So start with parking lot. Start there.
Thank you.
Of course.
Anybody else? Here's your chance.
I mean, I could literally teach entire curriculums about
exactly.
A really fun app that I have recommended to individuals interested at all, and to be like, oh, that's why they say stretch this. Look at where that connects. Is Essential Anatomy. Jessica, I think I've told you about that before. Yes. It blew my mind when I was in grad school. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing, because I could then also point for athletes that I was working with, like, this is why this is probably what's tight. And when we talk about this, this is why your right side of your low back is bothering you. If you're saying that this, you know, it's just a really neat app to help you visualize what's going on underneath of your skin.
How about ankle mobility?
Did you say what about it, or?
Anything you recommend for ankle mobility?
There are a lot of different things that you can do. I mean, with all of the dynamics, right? Yeah. Focus, let that be your focus if it's your Achilles heel, not, you know, I guess for that. So when you do something, really think about pushing your heel back and keeping your leg long while you're doing these things, because that's going to help lengthen it out. Calf stretches, but also when you do calf stretches, you can also use I have my bands packed for work tomorrow, but you can use a rope or a band. And when you want to stretch them, also point the toe, right? We forget that, because if you point the toe, you're going to activate it, which is going to warm it up. But that when you pull it this way, really think about activating the front of your shin as well. They're going to work in reciprocally, right? In contrast to one another. So as you do that, it's going to help you gradually gain mobility and gain length as it warms up. And then as this turns on as well, it's going to tell it to turn off, which will help you get more length out of it. Other than that, if you have, that's why I mentioned that little running rocker thing. Those things really do work nicely. I mean, it seems kind of silly to get an apparatus like that for something so small. You could probably make one, but I mean, they're only a couple of bucks and they really do help. You can use it sitting down. And that is a big key too, because obviously ankle mobility, part of it could be if you've broken your ankle, you're gonna have scar tissue in there that needs to be kind of worked out. Some of that comes out with massage. So massage might be something depending on how inhibited you feel you are, right? But it's important that when you do calf stretches, that's why I said bent knee and straight knee, is between your gastrocnemius and your soleus, you're gonna target them differently by having your knee straight or bent, right? So that's why they have like seated calf raises at the gym. Like, what's that even for? Well, it's so that you target one muscle instead of the other one. So that way you can separate the two. If they're tight, they're going to keep your ankles from moving. But that's also why I recommend use the band or use the rope, where you give yourself, like, imagine you see my foot here. Imagine this is a rope or a band that I can apply tension to. So I push against it, so that makes me activate the muscle, right? And turn it off and on. And just create like a pumping action in the back of your leg and in the front to help with that mobility as well. Try those several things. See if they help.
Nice. How about one last question?
Sure. One last thing for you there, Bob, too, could be tennis ball on the bottom of your foot. Roll those guys out too, because it could be toes, just general foot all around, like I'll even intentionally stretch my toes one at a time, after I do that. If I'm sending some emails or something, I'll get a ball and just kind of, mindlessly roll my feet around on them just to kind of loosen everything up under there.
Cool. So anybody else? I don't want to keep Lindsay. Go on.
What's a good stretch for your glutes?
For glutes, yeah.
Simple.
There are several that you can do. A couple of the very easiest. First of all, I love foam rolling my butt. I opened up the chat here to see if there are questions here. I love foam rolling my butt. It always surprises me. When our physical therapist would work, he would literally shove his elbow in there because you can get all kinds of lumps up right where your tailbone hits. But if you sit on the ground, or you can even do this standing. Sometimes I'll even use something high because I sometimes just don't like to be on the ground, So I'll use a banister or something like that and put my foot up and put it to the side. Normally I'll use the side of my bed so that I can actually get into this position here with this resting across. And that's something that I do prefer, is standing up, because then I can make sure that my leg is straight, not doing something wonky, right? So my hip flexors open. And I actually have my bed is quite high. It's not up this high, but it's quite high. And then I will literally rest it there. And I play around with the angle of my foot when I do this. And I aim to work so that my leg can actually be down, right? If we can only get here and it's already stretching my butt, then I'm quite tight in my butt. But again, if I can get here. Another thing that you can do is you can sit in a chair, sit on the ground, whatever you're most comfortable with. And you'll notice I'll say whatever you're most comfortable with, because that is probably going to make it, the fact that you need to do it, right? That's the first thing. So if you don't like something or you're uncomfortable doing it, then you're probably not going to do it. So pick the version that you are most likely to do. When I said with the wide V-sit, can you still see me? Yes, the wide V-sit. You can do just a simple foot over. And when you do this, again, stay off the squishy part of your butt, right? We don't want to be tucked under. Think of being up on your tailbones here. And if that means you need to bring your body forward a little bit to do it, that is fine. but it's almost like you walk your tailbone a little bit, right? And that's going to help you separate. So I'm feeling it here, feeling it all around in here. It's just a basic seated glute stretch. But the key here is, again, I'll see athletes do this all the time, where their low back bends. That's just an accommodation. They're like, I'm not feeling it. Well, you got to get up on that tailbone to really kind of open up the backside of your body.
I don't see your feet. Where your feet at? I don't see it.
Oh,
Is it
yeah. Let me tip myself down here so you can see me better. I'm so small, I can't quite see. Yeah. Yeah, you should be able to see now. So one leg is just out here. And then I pick my foot up, put it across. Okay. And the keys are tailbone back. Make sure that you're sitting up nice and tall, almost like you're turning your pelvis over and pushing your belly button through. Okay. The biggest thing that will happen is a lot of times people will just kind of scoot back and let their back round and their butt tuck under, and then you don't get the benefit of the glute. So sit up on it, chest stays up, turn the hips on, right? Think about walking your tailbone back, turning your hips forward, pushing your belly button through here, and then just bringing your leg toward your body.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that's one place to start. Another thing that you could do is lay over to the side here, right? You're going to get low back stretching in here. But you can also get some glute stretch in it as well. You could also do it where you literally lay on the ground and do it this way, right? So now you have the frame of reference of the ground. You'll just notice that all these positions are basically me looking to turn my leg across my body. You're kind of having to rotate it. So rather than it being just here, you have to rotate your leg just a bit. Does that make sense if I'm doing it from the ground here?
Yeah.
Okay. But again, try foam rolling it too. That's one of my favorite ways to warm it up. You can foam roll before and after, so you can foam roll as part of your warm up and your cool down. And the way that you would do that is put your foot across here and then kind of roll around the joint itself. Right?
Yeah.
Really looking to expose the meat that you want to roll out.
Cool, Lindsay. So there's one more, I think, that was in the chat if you want to go for it, or can you warm up prior to going to the club to row? So I'm not sure how many minutes, Angela, you're away from the club, but if you want to
Yeah, I just meant,
Yeah.
you know, if your location's not optimal, is it okay to warm up and then drive 5-10 minutes and then
finish warming up at your actual club?
well, or just and then go do your row?
Yeah, so you have like a 10 to 14-ish minute window before you start to like right? They do these studies with, you know, all kinds of different things, but basically looking at potentiation and recruitment of muscles, and you start to see that decline of like, I'm ready, I'm peaked, and I need to do my next set now before I start to lose it, which that's also a really good frame of reference that I like to use if you're going out to race, to make sure that you're finishing your warm up within no more than 10 minutes of your actual race start time. And if you're delayed for whatever reason, that's why it's really important to have kind of a race plan going into these things, to know the time that you're going to be up there. And no, nothing ever goes right on race day. Find a way to like do an extra 10 or move back and forth or something else that you can kind of add in case there is a delay, because it's always good to stay within that period of time. Finish your warm up like 4-ish minutes before would be awesome, but no more than 10 or 15 minutes because you're going to start to lose it. Angela, if that's your only option, starting that way will help, but then also kind of topping up the tank at the very least when you get to the boathouse will be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, something that I also love to do, before, especially if it's cold, the first training session, I'm older, I like to feel good, right? All these, take a hot shower in the morning and stretch in the shower. And that's a good way to start too, because part of the reason why we warm up is because we literally increase our body temperature. It's a systemic warming that we're creating with motion. So you can get a benefit from literally using an external source like a hot water to help you warm up as well. The one thing I made a couple of notes for myself here, really take the extra time with these warm-ups and cool downs. It always kills me to see teams like rush because they're like, oh, we don't have time, we need to do this volume, we need to do this training. Well, let the warm-up and cool down be part of your training, because A, you're going to stay healthier, which is going to make you more consistent, which is going to make you better in the long run, right? But take the time, because it teaches either you, it gives you tools to have some autonomy and to own your improvement, right? And if you really can teach, let's say you're working with a team, you can teach maybe the teacher coxswains, teach the new kid, teach someone that doesn't have the fastest erg score. Pick the person that's the best at this stuff and get your, the hammers to learn from them. And that lets everyone on the team to own different things and be really great at different things, right? It's the leadership pipeline. It's how you create like trust and camaraderie among the group. But really take the time to reiterate the fact that the technique is just so important. Then athletes are in the habit of prioritizing technique, which is, again, in the long run, only going to be a huge payoff. Take extra time in the early season, right? In the early phases of the season, and make sure you're doing it right in the very beginning. That way you don't have to spot check all season long, or you only have to spot check all season long. That way you can also video your athletes doing this, video yourself doing this in the beginning of the season, and then video them again later down the line, or take pictures again and be like, look what you've done, and you didn't even realize it because all you were doing was warming up. So those are fun ways. Recovery days, for instance. I know I'm rambling here, but let's say you have a recovery week, and it's you have a month, you built this training plan. Well, your 4th week is probably going to be some recovery. Practice can be just as long, or maybe it's only a hair shorter, but you just spend a ton more time on your warm-ups and cool downs and do it together as a group. The actual training is a little shorter, where that automatically gives you time to really, clean up this other stuff. I love the idea. I always recommend to athletes doing a body scan. And by virtue of doing alternating things, where you're doing one side then the other, it exposes, something that you might not have realized. It's like, oh, that's tight today. I had no idea. Well, because you've isolated those different areas, you become aware of them when you might not have otherwise. And that self-awareness is an incredibly beneficial skill to develop throughout your life,
Nice. Well, this is wonderful. I just want to let everybody know that if you do want a copy of this video, you can email me directly, or it'll be uploaded onto the Petaluma Riverside Chats YouTube channel in a couple days, if you want to reference that. And also just a reminder that you can get a hold of Lindsay through her website, and actually read her new book. It's really lovely, and you might go back and listen to the conversation that she had regarding the book. And actually, she's got all sorts of media out there that's really interesting. So I highly encourage you.
Thank you. Yeah. I will say I do people for a couple of conferences. I've been working and just had a lot of things doing, but on YouTube, I have a bunch of videos up on YouTube. So some of these things, like just the little short clips of what they are demonstrating them, are up there. And I'm behind, but I'm working on getting more up there. So you'll see, there are hundreds of different ones, but why I would choose them specifically for rowing, what they would actually do for you. So over time, I'll keep working on those for you guys as well.
Cool.
They're fun and helpful.
Nice.